topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
And welcome to Triversity Talk. My official co-host tonight, of course, is my dog Nugget. He either wants a walk or something to eat. He only comes to me when he wants something. Like people in the world. I am so happy to have everybody with me on this Wednesday night, getting ready for the whole holiday season. So much to do. And as you know, I'm broadcasting from New York City, but Triversity, our LGBTQ center, is in Milford, Pennsylvania. Triversity, the Pride Center. We have various open hours. Please make sure you check our site online, both our Facebook site and our website, to find out when our open hours are. We're always happy to have you drop in. And again, we're an amazing resource service. Or if you just want to have a little talk or just get out of the cold, please come in and see us. Thank you all so much. So there's been a lot of talk about transgender bills being passed, right? And it's something that we've been talking about for the last year and a half, to say the least. And now, as we move forward into January, there are a lot of things on the table. I'll just put it that way. And none of us know where these things are going to be going. So I was very interested when I heard about tonight's guest, because what this person is doing as a creative composer is shining a light on transgender. Our guest tonight is from New York and is a composer described as one of the most consistently interesting amongst the present generation of United States theater composers. Okay, so Grammy Award winner, has done so many interesting operas, which I am going to wait with bated breath to have him tell us about. I'm very excited about that. So please, without further ado, please welcome Tobias Picker. Thank you. And there you are. We're always happy when the introduction works and the guest appears. And nothing happens with the Wi-Fi. Thank you so much, first of all, for taking time out of you're incredibly busy now.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
But I have learned how to take time for myself, and this is time for myself, and it's time to share my experience. So,
well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that, because you just hit on something. You're sharing your experience. And when you do share your experience, it shares that with people that are out there, people that will learn something. Sometimes the sharing will make people feel better about themselves. But certainly we like to think people leave this show knowing a little more, experiencing a little more. So I'm going to start with our present. How did you get known for casting and creating work around transgender?
Well, it started when I was asked if I wanted to write an opera commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion. Wow. And I started researching who all was throwing bottles, and who all really was responsible for rebelling. And I started learning about trans people in a way that I had not understood before. Their significance to the what was then called the gay rights movement,
Mhm.
and and their participation in every um, aspect of society. I I I I thought for an opera that which I didn't do it. I didn't write an opera about Stonewall in the end because I decided to do what I did instead. Um, 'Cause I preferred the story, but I thought any opera uh, that featured Marsha P. Johnson
Right.
could have trans singers in it, but I didn't know of any trans opera singers. And a friend of mine said, "Oh yes, there are some. You should look up Lucia Lucas." And Lucia Lucas was very happy to hear from me when I got in touch with her and said I'd love to hear you sing. And she lives in Germany now, and she flew to New York and auditioned for us. And I me at the time was running the Tulsa Opera as well as doing my own thing, and I was casting Don Giovanni, so I immediately cast her as Don Giovanni in our production of Don Giovanni in Tulsa Opera, and we became friends. And
Wonderful.
I I had this idea, not about Stonewall, but a different idea that was about the life of Lili Elbe, which was made famous to the general public by a film called The Danish Girl. And
Right.
so,
She was a painter. Both she and her wife were painters, famous painters.
yeah, exactly, from Copenhagen. And this story really gripped me when I first encountered it. And so, going back to Lili Elbe's own memoirs, my librettist, who's Arye Lev Stolman, also my partner in life and my husband, my partner of 45 years, I would
Yeah,
say.
wow.
Um,
Congratulations. That's a long time.
yes, uh, I wrote the libretto for this, and with well, the first thing I did was ask Lucia, would you want an opera? Would you want to play Lili Elbe in an opera? Uh, and she said yes, without hesitating. That's my story. And so she became our dramaturg, which was meant that she advised us on all aspects of
Mhm.
how to approach the subject, and both historically and contemporarily, and the differences between between language, how we use language today, and how there was no language 100 years ago when Lili Elbe was having one of the first gender affirmation surgeries that ever
Right.
occurred.
Which were disastrous in those days.
Was disastrous, and killed her in the end. So um, yeah, so but I became interested in because I would have liked to commemorate Stonewall, but I didn't see it as an operatic subject. But it made me get. I started getting very interested in heroines of Stonewall, and their descendants, of which I think of Lucia as one of, because
Right.
she's an advocate for people of trans experience, and especially in the opera world, probably the most famous opera singer in the world today of trans experience. Although there are now quite a few.
There have been quite a few that have come along, but it's funny when we talk about transgender, people will think of Stonewall. Okay, they'll think of Marsha P. Johnson. They won't necessarily think of opera. Because personally, I feel there were so many people that switched roles in the opera. They just always did. It was totally accepted. So maybe it wasn't so unusual, if you understand what I'm saying. Now the word transgender, right? Oh, there's someone who's transgender playing a role in an opera. So they would call that out now. I'm curious, with the history of opera, which you are the expert, not I. In the history of opera, how did transgender play out?
Well, there were lots of switchings of roles.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the composer in Ariadne, for instance, is sung by a mezzo soprano woman traditionally, but she's playing a man as the composer,
Right.
and we find the same thing in Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, and throughout the history of opera. So gender fluidity has existed
Mm-hmm.
throughout the 400 years history, but never as specifically as it did when we wrote Lili Elbe, where we had an actual transgender artist playing the role of a transgender person who was actually an historical figure.
Yeah.
That was something that we're very proud of having done for the first time.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, how much did the film The Danish Girl, how much was the opera based on The Danish Girl?
It wasn't based on the Danish Girl at all.
There were not even any kinds of connections to, because I remember that film quite well.
There are coincidences because
Coincidences.
the Danish Girl uh, is based on a book which
Yeah.
took from the original sources some of the same original sources that we drew upon for our narrative, specifically Man into Woman by Lili Elbe, which is her
Right.
story. And but there is nothing from the film. We took nothing from the film or the book for the movie.
For, for the
They,
opera.
they were drawing on the same original sources of information that we were.
That you did. To create a piece like that, how long did it take you?
Well, the pandemic intervened, so normally it would take 2.5 or 3 years, but with the pandemic, uh, we postponed the premiere. But
Absolutely.
it's usually one opera usually is 2 to 3 years, but
Yeah.
4 or 5 in the planning from inception to the premiere.
Wow. It really is a labor of love. Lili Elbe was very well received when it opened up at the Theater St. Gallen,
In St. Gallen in Switzerland, eastern Switzerland,
Eastern Switzerland.
just a year ago, and it was very, very, very well received by the German-speaking press,
Wow.
and won an award from Oper magazine, which is
Yeah.
one of the leading opera magazines in Germany, as best world premiere of 2023.
Wow. That's really quite an honor. I'm thinking about an opera like this now in the political landscape that is ahead of us, which is extremely uncertain. And I was going to say, I'm not quite sure trans friendly. I'm not sure it's trans friendly at all. Um, where are you planning on showing the opera here?
Well, we, we will have an American premiere,
Yes.
a major American premiere of the opera in 2026, and that is going to be announced in May.
I'll have to follow you on social media and on your website then to get that.
Unfortunately, I can't say where because it's up to the opera company to announce the premiere, not the composer.
Right. That's
But
understood.
it will be premiered and people can see it from all over. In fact, if there's a film of the opera that's easy to access on my YouTube channel of the whole production that was premiered in St. Gallen.
And actually, I did access it on your YouTube channel, but seeing opera live, of course, there's nothing like it.
No, it's there's a magic you cannot translate into two dimensions.
Exactly, because computers are such a flat medium. So, your story, how did you become a composer?
I tend to think I was born as a composer. I don't remember the time before I started very well because I started when I was 8. So, but the cultural climate was different when I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
um, and network television, CBS television showed young people's concerts from the New York Philharmonic.
I do remember the young people's concerts.
And they were taped for broadcast every Saturday, and there were operas on network television. So I was exposed to a contemporary opera very young, Amal and the Night Visitors. When I was a child, it was on every Christmas, and so there were things like that being taken to a Leonard. My mother took me to a Leonard Bernstein Young People's concert,
I remember those, right?
and we attended Andre Watts's historic debut, and in Philharmonic Hall, and there are all these influences around me that music was just part of our household and our life, and it music, art, and literature, and it was for me there was no real choice.
Right. You came from a house where not only were you exposed to it, but I wanted to ask you about your parents. Which one of them or both are musically oriented or musically gifted?
Well, my mother was a very accomplished painter and shoe designer, and she also played the piano. She learned the piano as a child. They had a piano in their home, and so she was mainly exposing me to classical music when I was very, very, very small.
Oh, wow, at a
Um,
young age.
but my father listened to the same music, so there was there was the exposure from both, and he exposed me to great art and took me to the great museums of the world, and so both of them, and also he was uh, literarily inclined, so I was exposed to to great books by him. But my mother was the one who would was reading composer biographies when I was a small child, and for some reason became obsessed with them.
No, I would have, because you are a kid. Kids do tend to veer off of things, but from what I'm getting from you, you were incredibly focused, surrounded by it, and absolutely loved it. It was a passion from very young. Now, as you got into your teen years, I always like asking people this: where did you end up going to school?
I went to public school from kindergarten through 12th grade
Well,
in Bedford, New York, and but at the age of 10, I started attending the Juilliard Preparatory Division on
okay,
every
yeah.
Saturday after. For I would spend the day in the city on Saturday, take the train in 125th Street and the crosstown bus, and have my theory, my piano lesson, my ear training lessons, and go home and have
How
practice of the week.
So you were absolutely molded for the career that you have.
Well, yes, without my parents realizing it. They were very surprised when I told them I planned to pursue a career as a composer. They weren't they weren't they just thought that was normal exposure to expose your children to, and then they would get a normal job, and but they would live a life of culture.
Right. But
I
you
don't.
didn't want to play soccer or
They
any of
never
those.
expected me to become a composer.
Wow.
My sister's an accomplished artist. I don't think they expected her. People don't necessarily turn out the way their parents are expecting them to.
No, that's true. But the amount of culture that you grew up with is, really impressive. Were you raised in New York? You were in Bedford. You said you went to school. Is that where you grew up for the most part?
I grew up in Westchester.
Yeah,
Yes.
Westchester's. I mean, my cousins grew up in Westchester. They're great people. They're well educated, but they don't have your background. So I love that your parents put so much into you, and even though you surprised them in the end, I kudos to them, for knowing the value of raising a child in that kind of arts background. For some reason, I think nowadays is maybe more challenging because there's more. When you were growing up, there wasn't the internet, right?
No.
I don't know if there was Xbox. I don't play any of that, but
No, there
those
was
are
just a TV set.
just the TV set, or you didn't. Oh, yeah, you watch
We
TV.
had we had a radio too,
Yeah,
so I
TV and radio, right?
would listen to WQXR, and we had a program guide, so I could plan what I was going to listen to.
You would plan what you listen to. Now that is definitely a focused kid. Wow. So when where did you graduate from university? Where did you go?
I went to the first I went to the Manhattan School of Music for my undergraduate degree. Then I went to the Juilliard School for my master's of music, and then I went to Princeton for a master's of fine arts.
Right.
And then I was enough. I felt like it was enough degrees, and
Oh my gosh, it's a ton of degrees and an incredible pedigree. So I'm curious because I have had various friends involved in opera. My friend Joe Bichetta ran the Fresno Opera Company. Often the opera companies get in trouble financially. Why is that? Is there not enough people that attend opera? Or it's the cost to produce so many people that perform in opera? I wonder.
both. It's extremely expensive to produce, and and the audience is shrinking.
The audience is shrinking.
Audiences today have in their pocket they can have entertainment from of any kind from anywhere in the world, not three-dimensional as you pointed out, but
Right.
they can stream. We couldn't There was no such thing as streaming until all of this started in the last 30 years. And this has changed people's behavior from staying in to going out, for instance. Just a simple, choice of can I do I really want to go out to the opera house, or when I can watch something same thing or similar on my fabulous,
Flat screen TV, but I'm sure you'll agree with me. We're talking about those are like two totally different entities. It's not even in the same reality. And
no,
I
it's
guess,
three dimensions versus
right.
two. And the experience you can't experience theater or in a two-dimensional really experience it.
No, you absolutely can't. Did you find that when you work in Europe as opposed to here, that the operas are more well attended in Europe?
I would say it's much more baked into the culture and has been for a number of years than it has into the American culture. And
Right.
also it's supported by the state. So there's tremendous tremendous difference in the amount of resources that go into supporting opera by the state, and what compared to our country where we don't have, I mean, it's very state support funding for the arts is
Right.
It's not even worth mentioning. It's so small.
Right. Right. It makes me wonder, to me, like the opera live is just absolutely spectacular. There's nothing like it. There's no experience like it. And I worry, this next generation coming up, if they're exposed to, and again, it's great for people that can't get to the opera. They can turn on YouTube and see your opera, but it is so vastly, vastly different than the thrill of the real experience. And it's magic when you see it in the theater. It's magic when you see it in a very, very old theater, right? It's
Yes.
just not the same when you stream it or watch it on TV. I can only hope that the kids that are coming up that are oriented towards you and maybe have parents that are like yours that put such an emphasis. Your parents put an emphasis on the normalcy of that kind of culture. It was just normal, right? That was how you were growing up and you were exposed to all of that.
I thought it was normal, but it was different from most of my friends.
Yeah, of course.
A few of them had grew up like that, but actually most of them didn't. It was very important to my parents to take us to Italy when we were young and see
All the historical monuments and why they're there.
Botticelli in person. And, those things make a deep impression on a 12-year-old.
The Pieta, yeah. Yeah, you definitely end up taking that with you. Well, okay, we have 2 clips that I chose for tonight that I thought you sent them to me, but I probably got them off of your site, which is very comprehensive. And if our producer can play those clips now, we'd like to watch. Thank you.
This is Lili Elbe.
Yes.
Lili Elbe underwent gender affirmation surgery in 1930 at a time when nobody had done that before. Lili Elbe was an artist before named Einar Wegener, and this is a painting by her from 1907 of the fountains at Versailles.
I'm so excited about our opera, Lili Elbe, which tells Lili's story of transition. It's a beautiful story of Lili and her wife discovering who they are as artists and people. It's special to me because I've had so many of those same feelings, and there's so many parallels in Lili's journey and my journey.
This opera is my most transcendental work. Musically, it is different from anything I've written. It is about the eternity of the earth, the eternal beauty of the earth, about rebirth and the continuation of life.
Thank you so much. So I have questions. What were the biggest challenges in creating Lili Elbe from its conception to the actual production on stage?
Surviving.
That's a good, honest answer. Please share.
Well, it's writing an opera is a lot of work.
Yeah.
There are thousands and thousands of notes and words and an awful lot of things going on at the same time. So to say what was the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge was creating a large form that worked, that would be able to contain and explain Lili Elbe in a truthful, and accurate, and an empathic way. And I think we achieved that, but it did took a few years to do.
I would imagine. I think using the word empathic, maybe that's what I was getting at when I was asking about the challenges of it. I mean, the subject matter. And again, I don't know if opera is like producing other forms of theater, but it always has to run through the creator's head. How is this going to be received? How do I create something that's going to be well received? How do I get my message received? What was that like for you?
Well, I wanted to place the first performance of this opera in the most secure and safe environment possible. So I talked to many opera houses. I wanted it also to premiere in Europe because Lili and Gerda were Europeans, and I felt it was important. So I talked to many opera houses about how to present it, but it was the theater in St. Gallen, and Jan Henrik Bogen, who's the general director of that theater and in charge of all opera, that really understood, really got the subject. The director that we worked with, Christian Lada, they really understood what the kinds of things we were working with.
Okay.
And they designed a safe space for a lot of people to work in, on some very, very difficult, challenging material, and just from the point of view of casting, the cast was there were three, besides Lucia Lucas, there were two other trans people in the cast, and one of the assistant directors was trans. A lot of people behind the scenes, but it was a very inclusive cast, and including all of the letters of the
spectrum, as we say. Yeah.
Yes, actually, and that was very magical and consoling to work in that environment. It was really one of I've worked in some great opera houses, including the Met, which is unsurpassable. But I mean, it was one of the great artistic, personal, professional experiences of my life, because it was because the opera house, the people that ran the opera house understood what we were going for.
Yeah. Well, you're probably the first person that was doing that kind of an opera.
Well, others have done smaller scale operas based
This
on
is
trans
beautiful.
characters, but this was a grand opera,
Amazing.
and a full evening. So yeah, that's true. What was interesting was that the audiences that turned out in what I was told was a very conservative area of Switzerland, eastern
Amazing.
Switzerland, which borders Austria and Germany. Um, uh, but people came back several times, and
Amazing.
there were sold out houses. Not all of them, but they were the ones that weren't were sold well, and uh, it was an experience for people to learn that as I like to say that with apologies to Gandhi, all men are not brothers, but we are all siblings.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the message that the people who came to see the opera in the theater took away from the experience. That these are human beings with human problems like mine.
Right. Which brings me to the fact that I believe that art, opera, theater, film, books are the bridge that can open up minds and change minds. And right now to me, you have such an important piece. It hasn't been done here. I'm excited for when you bring this to the United States, and again because of my awareness of where things are at politically now and the kinds of bills that are being proposed out there, and the kind of backlash and the way things have gone, and the fact, the very basics, there's talk of about taking people's hormones away from them. I mean, things that are absolutely blasphemous are now on the table, right? Someone like you creates such an incredible, this is so incredibly beautiful. And it's very obvious, even from the tiny snippet that you showed to our audience tonight, you've not only created a beautiful piece, you created a piece of equality, and you did create a safe space. And I think for me, the message I want to get out there is that safe space needs to be communicated to people everywhere that are threatened by other people's equality. There's room for all of us. And, pardon this saying, we need to live and let live.
Well, that's also a good message of this opera, um, and I think I I agree. This is a different time to present Lili Elbe in America, in this America that we are facing
This
now.
America, yeah.
Would have been if we had been facing the, a different kind of America that some of us thought we were going to, or hoped we would be. So I don't know what to expect
Right.
from the. I think the public will still be hospitable and interested and agreeable, but I don't know whether they'll. I think we live in frightening times, and I don't know. I I I don't know whether this will be. It really was somewhat controversial to premiere this in Switzerland.
Especially the area that you did it in, absolutely. But
Not
what received?
not really controversial, but and to do it in America in a big way, I don't know whether it will be controversial or not. Lily is she's such a human character, and all the characters in the show are very human. So
Right.
anybody who knew anything about it, what it was about, would see that it's a human story, a human drama, um, about all the things that take place in all the classic operas, love and loss
Right.
and
Pain.
change and pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know. I haven't given, frankly, a lot of thought to what's going to be in 2 years when we premiere this. It's actually the year and a half. I I don't I can't. My crystal ball is out of out of
Had a commission.
out of commission.
It's in the drawer with my Ouija board.
Yeah.
I will say, even though you drew from history, you didn't draw from the film The Danish Girl. I will say, knowing what I know about people, that having that film, The Danish Girl, that had been out and so many people saw it and so many people loved it, I think that as a base, right? And it gave information. I think it's very good that that existed as a base.
Well, it's a frame of reference for people who
I think a
saw
lot,
it, who happen to see it.
right. I think the numbers of people that saw it, and probably many more people saw that than will be able to go to the opera, right? But once people have that knowledge, I think that will all work in your favor when you launch it here. And
Well,
I for one, cannot wait
if
to
you
see it.
count, if you're counting, I would think that by the end of time, more people will have seen the opera than the film.
Yeah, that is that is probably true. So
So I would like to think.
and so would I. I wanted to ask you about Awakenings, the story of Dr. Oliver Sacks. If you could talk a little bit about that opera.
Yes, Awakenings is based on a book that was written by Oliver Sacks in the 1970s, which W.H. Auden called a masterpiece. It was about cases that he encountered as a resident neurologist in the Bronx when he was in the 1960s, when he was young man, fresh out of medical school, who had been the victims of a sleeping sickness that attacked them in the 1920s and had been asleep for 30 and 40 years. And his experiments which succeeded in waking them up as if they were Rip Van Winkle, or Rip Van Winkle. It's kind of the story of Rip Van Winkle meets Sleeping Beauty. These people were indoors for their whole lives because they had to be taken care of. So their skin didn't age the way other people's skin ages. Were exposed to the outdoors. And Oliver Sacks wrote this book in the 70s, and it was made into a film in 1990 called Awakenings, starring
Yeah.
Robert De Niro and Robin Williams as Oliver Sacks, with a different name for the movie. And it was a great film. We based our opera on the book Awakenings, and the my interest in the subject kind of grew out of a long friendship that I had with Dr. Sacks.
That was going to be my question. Like, this is a very unusual subject matter to begin with, and then doing an opera about it. So you had a personal connection.
I had a personal connection, and also I am neurodivergent myself. I've had Tourette's syndrome since the age of 5 or 6, and so a lot of challenges came with that. And I saw an opportunity in Awakenings to address some of my own issues, and to also reveal an Oliver Sacks who was in the closet when the film was made and couldn't be himself. He so he did he only came out at the age of 82 in his autobiography in 2015. But
82. Can you imagine?
he very much he did suffer a lot. He very much wanted me to make an opera and make Awakenings into an opera, and unfortunately he didn't live to see it. But he did see us make it into a ballet for the Rambert Dance Company in England, because the material is just so rich. But in the opera, this opera is also for those of you who want to watch an opera on your computer, is also on my YouTube channel.
Yep.
And it's the only place that these operas can be seen until you see them in the theater. And I don't know when that one will come around next.
Wow.
So
you had yourself really personally vested in this story. How is that for you? What kinds of things did it bring up?
well, I like it. Like every story I do, lives in my heart and in my
Right.
soul, and so it brought up similar things to Lili Elbe, for instance, among other operas. But the sense of my own otherness,
I was going to say your otherness.
and
Yeah.
being neurodivergent, growing up gay at a time when it was, I mean, you didn't speak of such things, and so I think it's probably having these characteristics gave me perhaps a certain appreciation for the challenges that some of our friends who are trans have to meet, or in Oliver's case, someone who had to live his life in the closet.
Right. And I think all of this brings a unique kind of empathy to the kind of work that you do, because
Well,
you're experiencing it on a whole other level and creating it on a whole other level. And that's in its greatness and what you do.
I think it's the artist's responsibility to find
Yeah.
their core and what is really the most resonant part of our soul
Yeah.
to share with the world, and hope that the world has a chance to experience it through our filter.
Yeah. Well, by the creation of it, you're giving the world a chance to have some of the experience you had in creating it. And to me, you know what? That's a gift to be able to do that. I'm going to ask you, what are you working on something now that you can share, or things coming up?
We're working on a new opera about anti-Semitism.
Oh my goodness, you're
I'm also
guys, you're terrific. I have to tell you.
belong to another majority, which is the Jewish people. I
Right.
mean, another minority. I think I said majority, minority, and so and it's another way of another othering experience to grow up
Yeah.
as a Jew, and it deals with anti-Semitism in America, and uh, and it's I think it's a pretty explosive topic.
You actually choose.
Choice of words, but
Yeah, well, you choose topics that quote unquote are not the norm, and they're topics that are out there, and they're topics that a lot of people wouldn't take a chance on. I'm excited for your next piece.
thank
I'm
you.
excited to see Lili Elbe when it comes to the United States. I hope it's, in the New York area. And so it makes it easy for me to come and see. Where can people find you?
TobiasPicker.com.
Okay, great.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, that's the easy stuff, Wikipedia, but I'm also going to call out your YouTube channel.
My YouTube channel
YouTube channel is really, really great because that's what I call meat and potatoes.
has most of my operas are there. My Stephen King opera is there, and I think they're all there. A lot of my concert works are there,
and the concert work is there. Well, if you can believe this, time is out, and I don't know where the conversation ran out. I just feel like I could spend hours talking to you. I always like to take a picture of my guest on this one-dimensional screen. So if you look into my camera,
okay,
or we go, and one more, and thank you. Truly enjoyed talking with you. Wishing you a wonderful holiday and the best with all your work. And of course, I Facebook friended you, and want to stay on top of everything that you're doing.
Thank you for having me on Monday.
Absolutely. And have a wonderful holiday. Thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.